Good evening, Boston Unity Group, and it is delightful to see you here tonight. This is April, and with me tonight is most of the Connecticut Game Dev Group. Wave everybody who has a camera on. Excellent. It's good to see everybody. This is a really cool diversion for us. We haven't done this before, so right to my that way is Graham. He's the other organizer of Boston Unity Group who is here tonight. Elliot can't make it tonight, so he's not with us, but the three of us normally organize Bug, and we normally have speakers in Boston do presentations, and a lot of these folks have come along to those presentations, and they have their own group, and we decided to team up and do the Discord thing. So tonight we have a demo night mixer that is the CT folks have organized for us, so we are very grateful that you have had us over here tonight. And yeah, I guess before we get started, do we have any announcements? Do believe there was Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion came out like a week ago, and he's doing really awesomely well at the moment. So regional success stories. I even saw Jason Schreier tweeted about it, so I'm like, yes, go guys. So that's a local success. Graham, how's your life going at the moment?
Oh, everything's fine.
Very cozy.
Very cozy, yes.
Very cozy.
Yeah. No, it's actually going really well. We've been I've been like following the Cozy Grove hashtag on Instagram, and it's actually really fun. It's the first time like I've worked on a game that has a really strong internet presence, which is a pretty cool thing to see. Lots of fan art and like that. But yeah, it's boy, launching a game on like 8 platforms is it's a thing. So
not for the faint of heart. Do we have any other news? Boston Indies are doing streams again. There is another bit show coming up. Is it this week? Or is it next week? It's this week. Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's this week. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So that'll be coming up. We have I don't have any other announcements right now. If anyone wants to join this, by the way, I keep forgetting to mention this. If anyone wants to join this is a Discord server, and you're invited to join in if you want to come and watch the presentations more directly than on Twitch. You're welcome to watch us on Twitch. We do this every week, every month, and you're welcome to come and join us there. If you want to see, if you want to join directly, the Discord link is just gone into chat, so you can click that link and join the GameDevCT server. And as long as you're a nice person, they'll let you in. So, without any other ado, I guess I should hand over to Stefan and Jake. Stefan or Stexy?
Hello.
Which do you prefer to be?
Steeks or Stefan, whatever.
Steeks
whatever you prefer, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, I'm going to hand it to you because you're going to organize the show, so thank you, and take it away.
Hey everyone, so I'm Stefan. We're with GameDevCT. We're basically a group trying to grow the game development industry in Connecticut. We also reach out to other people in the New England area, trying to grow that, just trying to, spread the indie game dev love. Today we have a group of presenters for the first hour or so. It's going to be semi-rapid fire just because we got a lot of interest. So we're going to try to keep it moving. Each presenter will have up to 10 minutes to both present and field any quick Q&A. Hopefully it won't go to the full 10 minutes for each person. If so, whatever, it's okay if we go a little, we kind of wing it as we go. After that, we'll be doing our Game of the Month discussion. So our Game of the Month was Slay the Spire. And thankfully, we're joined by Anthony from Mega Crit Games, who worked on Slay the Spire. He'll be answering some questions. We have some pre-recorded ones that I've sent to him and also got from other people. After we go through those, we'll be just fielding it for everyone. Just hang around, chat. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jake, who is our first presenter. So Jake is with Closed Umbrella Games, and he's presenting his bowling VR demo.
Hi everyone, just setting this up. Okay, can everyone see that?
Mhm.
Not hearing any audio.
Yes, that was coming through great. Could you hear us okay, Jake?
Oh, yep.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, usually I do mobile games, but I recently got a headset, VR headset, particularly the Oculus Quest. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I decided why not do some kind of VR demo. So it's pretty simple, still kind of in the making. This is in Unreal. And yeah, it's pretty simple. You pick up the bowling ball, get a little closer if you want. And yeah,
I don't think we're seeing any movement.
Yeah, it looks frozen. We had this issue with
Yeah, it froze for me too.
Unreal before with some. Oh, there we go. It updated right as we were leaving. Yeah, it's not a big deal if you can't figure it out.
Yeah, it's not a big deal if you can't figure it out. Yeah, it's
And now there's echo.
not a big deal if you can't figure it out. Yeah, it's
And now there's echo.
not a big deal if you can't figure it out. Yeah, it's
And now there's
not
echo.
a big
Yeah, who's the? Okay, there we go. Okay, Jake, you there?
yep.
Okay, let's give this one more shot. Go ahead and hit play. Let's try it out. If not, we can go on. There's always next month. We pushed a few people back already who wanted to present this month. So again, we do this every month. You can follow us Facebook, Discord. We also have a mailing list. Follow us however you want. Anyone in the New England area, although we even take people from outside the New England area who want to present. It's not a big deal. We're just, again, trying to grow the game dev industry and get people to chat and give feedback. Sometimes we run into technical issues, especially with VR. That's always fun.
Can you see that?
I see the sky. Oh, there we go. Now I see your
yeah,
hands.
it's working.
Your hands.
Awesome. Yeah, so basically, what's going on with that? Yeah, so I've been working on this for a couple weeks now. And there's still some things I have to take care of. Like, for instance, the bowling ball looks more like a soccer ball. And
Looks
eventually,
like it froze again.
oh, it did?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like everything froze again. It's not a big
Okay.
deal.
Yeah,
We can-
I'll make a video and I'll post it on
yeah, if
on
you want to
Discord.
post it in the Mixer general, we're also going to be, just posting builds and other links to things that we've been doing so we can get some feedback and play testing. So yeah, I would just recommend throwing it up there. Okay.
So, yeah, and I guess for a couple announcements, I do have a couple of game updates coming up on the App Store, so I'll be posting info about that as well.
Cool.
And yeah,
We're gonna post this in the Mixer. Okay. So, anyways, let's try to move it on to the next person. So we have Monkey. Are you ready, Monkey?
Yeah.
So Monkey is with Robot Monkey Brain, and he's presenting Bounce Castle. Take it from here.
Thanks.
Okay, let me get this going. Everyone see?
That's a
I
yes.
assume so. Okay, great. All right, I'm just going to let this play for the duration. All right. Okay, I'll stop streaming that and put together very few slides here. So that's the rough cut of what I'd like to make into like a full game trailer in about a month. There was for people who haven't seen me showing this every month now at the game dev meetup. The game is a physics and card game. I tried to kind of mix in deck building along with like a physics game. Some of the inspirations for the game are Card Hunter, the board game Catacombs, Slay the Spire, and Hearthstone. It actually evolved from a different game that I was working on that was much more like a deck builder called Kick Punch Eat Meat. I was playing around with this. I wasn't really feeling like I was differentiating myself from other deck builders. So what I started to do was just kind of like throw the cards at like the enemy cards. And I liked how they kind of started to bounce around and the cards started to move. And that got me thinking like, well, actually, maybe this can be kind of like a physics thing. You can throw the cards out there and they can explode and hit other things and bring in this physical element. So then I started to do some experimenting with just Unity's physics. The A-Star pathfinding add-on for Unity in order to get like some kind of loose AI navigation. They pretty much just pick a point along their path line and hit themselves as hard as they can in that direction. All the art is being done by a fantastic artist who goes by the name of Butspo, aka Antonio. You should check out his Instagram. He's got a lot of great stuff. So we've been working on this game for about a year. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully I'll have it ready for early access by the end of the year.
Cool. Do we have any quick questions? No?
What platforms are you targeting?
I'm going to start with Steam, and then hopefully transition to Switch and maybe mobile someday, but I think it'll take a lot of UI tweaking to bring it there.
Do you draw any inspiration at all from like Kirby's Dream Course, that sort of thing? Because there's something really interesting about how this combines pinball with other elements of different kinds of builders.
So not Kirby's Dream Course specifically, but a lot of physics games. I just tried to think of. I looked at stuff like Fall Guys just for their environmental things. I think of pool. So we got like pits and stuff. Curling. So we on some levels have like a score zone that you're trying to like land in and stop inside. Any kind of like physics game, which gives me a lot to pull from. But
cool.
And Paper Mario just for the visuals too. Trying to think of putting like 2D objects in a 3D world and make them look like an actual kind of digital version of a board game. Anything else?
Yeah, just a quick technical question. You said Unity's A-Star pathfinding. That's not the nav mesh, or is that a different thing you picked up?
No, it's a plugin. It's on the asset store.
Okay. It's
just called A-Star Project, I believe. It's actually far more robust than the purposes that I'm using it for. I do have it map out a path as though it was going to walk along like a grid to the location. But like I said, I just pick a point along that and I just like apply force in that direction. And it works surprisingly well.
No, yeah, I was wondering because I've been doing almost the same thing with the nav mesh for Unity, this is a really powerful tool, except I just want to get I'm doing something very small with it, and I throw the rest of the information away.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for the presentation. Again, I would post in the Mixer General some information on how to get follow up on the game, like your social medias and all that stuff too.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So next, we have Kahlil think. From Civil X presenting Civilization Explorer. Sorry if I messed up your name. You here?
Yeah, I'm here, and it's saying that video is only available for 25 people, but that's okay. I could just share my screen.
You should be able, share your screen, yeah.
Yeah, because it said video chat isn't available for more than 25 users.
Let me try turning off my video chat and see if it'll let you start.
Yeah, I think actually if we could have all of the presenters.
Yeah, if everyone
on, but
turns off their video
off.
for now.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Another thing is I have my baby with me. I don't think she's gonna fuss. I'm waiting for Mama to get home, but so just FYI, if I have to mute for a second, that's why. Let me share my screen. Let's see here. My screen. Okay. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right. So Civil Explorer is a real-world questing tool for iOS and Android. We currently have a test build in test flight, and we've got like 20, 30 users just testing it. But it's based on creating real-world content, resources, and projects, and items, and keys as well. And keys will help you find the next item. And right now I'm using Google Maps API, but I could also swap it out for Mapbox as well to have like a nice GPS one that's a little bit, less focused on satellite. But because we're kind of really focusing on agricultural communities and sustainable and permaculture projects, that we're using this Google satellites because that seems to work pretty well. So this is like where I am right now in Western Mass. This is my little avatar, and I don't have any items right now, but I can hit that there, and that's actually the Solar Punk Festival that happened in Austin. I'm working with people in Austin, but when this is where they actually had it, and we placed some demo content here, people could click on having to do with the different types of content. These were actually health icons. So this is just a yoga video that someone has. But there's other guilds. These are based on the guilds of co-creation. So if you want to add content yourself, you can swipe through the different guilds. Okay. Okay, baby girl. That's Akasha. She's just excited to see her mama.
Sure, she's not excited about the game.
She is excited about the game. She's ready to quest herself, and when she gets at that age, it'll be great to send her out on some quests. So I put a piece of code right by my house, or actually a treasure chest, and I associate it with a code so that I have I can either scan a QR code to get this text in there, or just enter it in myself and hit go. Oh wait, I did the wrong code. Sorry, it's actually secret. It's actually secret item. My bad. So this is why the QR code reader, which I can show you, really helps because you don't have to worry about spelling. Okay, so there's my item demo, and that's right by my house. So here I am, and I can't click on that because I want people to actually go there. I don't really want people to come to my house, so this is just a demo. Keep in mind. But if you really wanted people to get to that treasure chest, you actually have to go into AR mode. So I apologize if my house looks messy, but you can probably get the chance once it locates where I am. Then the item will show up. And where is it? Well, right now I'm not unable to find it. So there's some fine tuning. It might be because my server hasn't written it to the JSON just yet. But the idea is when you actually go there, you see the chest, and you can click on it, and you can get the content within it. Okay, baby girl, give me just a second. So the other thing is you can add the keys. You can add the keys. So I can add a key. Okay, I know. Mom will be here soon. Just mute for a second.
It looks really cool. Does anyone have any questions?
It looks incredibly cool. The architecture must be quite a headache.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of NFC work, and just that alone can be a headache. Can't imagine the AR and positioning on top of it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
How many different guilds are there? And are they...
There are 12 guilds. 12 guilds altogether, and they really make up civic life. You can look up Wheel of Co-Creation. And the woman who made it tried to cover all the different sectors. And I can actually put a link into the chat after this, but yeah, it covers media, justice, governance, environment, education, health, all the different sectors of civil life. So that's the idea of having forums to associate with that. And the gameplay comes in when you actually start exploring quests and making your own quest. So here we are in Figma, and we're just collaborating on some UI designs. But this is the Explorer panel, which will bring up your projects, which are projects you choose to engage in and commit to. So those could be like a cob building workshop at a local community or farm, et cetera, et cetera. You could save those. And then quests are like little adventures that maybe the community is calling people in to do, and you could have those quests. And you could also make your own. So the bottom line of the Explorer panel is that your different content, whether they be projects, resources, quests, keys, items, they'll all show up here. So that's kind of like this bottom row. If I go here and just type in public channel, which has everything that people don't tag, now I have all the public channel stuff. So I can go in here and look through here and see the latest stuff that's been submitted. There's a key. Let's see, Sugarloaf. Here's one that's on top of Sugarloaf, which is close to my house. And you can see you even get GPS directions on here.
Cool.
So all the guilds correspond to real world people, organizations.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're going to do a project, which is just like, hey, this is my project. I'm building something in governance. I'm building something in education. I'm building something with currency. I'm doing something with art. I'm doing something with spirituality, science, relations, media, justice, infrastructure. So like, infrastructure, it's great, place to start. You click that and you can just say like dome. Wow, they autocorrect dome. What nerve? Dome for Airbnb. Add a YouTube video and put like dome or geodome. Search. And then you could throw a glamping dome in there. Access code. So if you wanted to encrypt this with a secret code and have a key associated, you could put it here and put like Dome Club. And then enter that data in. And you'll get a crystal. The cool thing about crystals is you don't have to be there in AR to access that content. So there's my dome video. If I want to hit it to my GPS, I just click this and it'll go to GPS. Because this has some rudimentary directions, but not like good enough to want to use for a long quest. But I can click that right there. So as long as if I enter the code here, Dome Club, done, go. Oh, did I spell it wrong? Dome Club? I don't know. Well, you guys get the point. It's already there anyway. But you can create a QR code. FCF is actually my secret code. So I hit save.
Not so secret anymore.
Not so secret anymore. And this, you'll see now, it's going to be like all stuff in my house. So I hit FCF, done, go. And there's all the stuff. You can see an aerial. This is the farm that I live on. It's an organic farm in Western Mass. And I'm just marking the infrastructure. Here's just like a dome photo that I did that I popped in there. A little some pictures of the greenhouses.
Cool. It looks really awesome. Yeah,
Thanks.
post some information in the Mixer General so people can follow up and ask questions and, check you out on social media.
Awesome. Thank you for your time and your ears. I appreciate it. And for letting my baby fuss a little bit. I'm glad I didn't give up. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Cool. So next we have Brian Young from Reclaim Interactive, and he's going to be presenting Deathgrip.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Cool. I'm going to play a quick trailer first. Hopefully you can hear this. One sec. So this player is not responding apparently. So let me try something else.
I heard something.
Yeah, it started and then it froze.
Yeah, you can try again. I was still streaming. I apologize for that. I turned it off.
Yeah, try one more time.
Were you sharing the the application window or the full screen?
Yeah.
Try it again with the full screen. See if that.
Well, it has to have sound.
It has to be the application. Try one more time.
We try
we had
VLC
two
instead.
live.
Okay. Wait, let me try VLC instead. Might fuss less. Okay. Okay.
That was pretty awesome.
That looked pretty sexy.
This is. Let me jump into the game and show a few things, but this is pretty much a case of what you see is what you get. So we're making a racing game. It started out well, first of all, my name is Brian. I'm an artist. I've done all the artwork, all the design for this, and I'm working with a programmer who's been nice enough to lend his time to help me out with getting everything implemented. So this started out, let me show my screen. So this started out as an endless racer because this is the first game I've ever made or tried to make. So I was going to go with a simple idea, and then after some experimenting, it kind of turned into the track seemed to work out. So then we started to focus on that. And we have a simple goal in mind for a beta, which is like 5 racers, 5 tracks, 5 weapons, because there will be combat. You can see the guns on it. And that's pretty much it. So if we go to loadout, you can kind of see a sense of the scale of these things with the guys on it. You have a few classes. I'm not sure exactly how these are going to be organized eventually, but this is the main one. Obviously, the game was inspired by Pod Racer. I don't know how many of you have played Episode 1 Racer, but that was a big inspiration. The whole idea for the game came from playing that as a kid, and then I haven't felt anybody really has remade that same experience today. I've played whatever there is available, including like Redout and like Ballistic, and they're still not quite the same. You don't have like these epic machines on like open tracks going through natural environments. Everything's kind of just stuck to the road. So I want to get away from that and introduce like shortcuts and jumps and all this stuff that you don't see today in any racing games anymore. So after you choose your racer here, which I'll just choose this guy, and there's a few maps. For those who have played Star Wars, I worked the old map from the game, which for those not familiar, if you know of Star Wars, there's pod racing, which is like a race that they have in the film, and one of those races is called the Bluenda Classic. So when this game, Episode 1 Racer, was made, I think back in '98, this was kind of like the premiere track at the end of the game. So I used it when we started testing like track stuff as a benchmark. So when I got things going around corners, I figured it was pretty close to the original. But I've made also 4 other tracks which are original. And looking to do more with it.
Cool. Do we have any questions?
How many tracks are there?
There's 4 original ones at the moment. So I'm looking to make one more for what we're going to be calling the beta.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool to see how far it's come.
How long have you been working with 3D art? You got really get a handle on materials and models and particles and everything.
Thanks. I'd probably say back when I was in high school, I picked up Blender, and like ever since I've just been using it.
Oh, is that your primary tool?
Yep.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. I only know very few people who've mastered it, and so you're probably like one of 3 people that I know who has this level of skill with it.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I don't even call myself a master. I know it really well, but I mean, I see some other people's art on like ArtStation, and some of that stuff makes me envious, but that's like the best of the best on there.
Well, like I've been trying. I'm just like, I would like to know like exactly how like, do you have any good resources? Because I've tried to learn Blender for video games, and I just find the resources all over the map in terms of quality. Like, I just can't seem to get a handle on some very basics of like how you should import models and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an in-depth thing if you want to shoot me a message after. But yeah, generally there's good sites like Blender Guru and like CG Cookie and stuff like that, which have the best materials, and then there's like other stuff that goes in depth.
I think what gets a lot of people is the interface of Blender is so vastly different in some ways from other programs. A lot of it is hotkey based.
Yeah, I think it's, in the long run, it's more fun and a lot more streamlined than some of the other applications.
Yeah, that's
once you get used to it, but there is a learning curve just because people have gotten used to that.
Yeah, that's similar to what Diz said, because she's a huge fan of it and she's been making fortunes running in Blender.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it looks awesome. Again,
Any
post
questions game specifically, or I don't know.
When do you plan on going into beta?
That depends. My programmer is not available that much at all. Maybe like a couple to a few hours a week. So I mean, the game's not really program heavy, but I'm probably going to be looking for another programmer to see if I can get more help on it. And if I do, ideally like within 6 months or so, because there's not too much to do. I just can't do it.
What engine is it?
This is Unity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
It's the standard pipeline, so nothing special there.
Are you going to allow for people to make their own maps?
Probably not. It's kind of a pain. And you have to know 3D, because you can't do anything terrain based.
Okay.
For various reasons.
I noticed that that since you had like the old map from Star Wars, I was actually kind of curious if you're going to have any kind of more callbacks to that old game.
I don't know. You'd have to give me examples. I mean, I don't want to get sued.
Yeah,
or
well,
like cease and desist stuff, because it has happened to others who've tried.
Yeah, but like I don't know, like maybe like in regards to like very kind of like characters designs or something, or maybe like even like a retro mode that just makes things kind of like look like it's like this like old version of the game.
Probably not.
You could have a very early structural looking Death Star in the sky up there.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. There's maybe some Easter eggs that are really hard to find. That was just, yeah.
Okay, so again, post your information in the Mixer General. Feel free to ask questions, follow up, all that fun stuff. Yeah, it looks great. It's come pretty far. So next we have Zach. Zach Singer is presenting Project Radical Adventure.
Yep. Hey everybody. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, so this is let me just start by sharing it. Here. Should be good. Okay. Yeah, so this is just a hobby project of mine. This isn't for like any studio or anything like this. This is a hobby project of mine I've been working on slowly but surely over the past couple of years. It's a 2-person project. I'm the programmer on it, and then I'm working with my friend Evan, who's not here in the chat, but he's doing the music and sound design for it. To give a brief overview, this, I guess the way I tend to describe it to people is a love letter to 2000s platformers, 3D platformers of the likes, games like Mario Sunshine, Sonic Adventure, Jak and Daxter. So it all kind of started as a game I wanted to try to capture the way certain characters moved in those games, like the way in Sonic Adventure the characters had a really great sense of momentum. And also I wanted to design a game that's kind of like open world, kind of linear. There's some music playing right now that I think is coming through the stream. Yeah, so in that same vein of kind of like maybe even also I took some inspiration from games like Banjo-Kazooie from the late 90s or Donkey Kong 64. So it's meant to be kind of like a collect-a-thon adventure platformer game. You have 3 characters you play as. They have different abilities that help them in different situations for platforming, combat, etc. Like this character has a double jump, and he has a hover ability that allows him to, cross large gaps and stuff. So the game is kind of split out. The structure of the world is kind of split out into 2 parts, where you have the open world, where there will be side quests to do, secrets to collect, and secret locations to find. And also just kind of like, it'll be, I guess, a little sandboxy, like this, where you can run around the environment, and you can knock things around, which I didn't demonstrate back over here. Here's a boat. I can hop on the boat, which I missed it. There's a boat. And then I'm gonna go over here real quick. And yeah, you can play around with some things in the environment, like the cars you can knock around. And so there are these areas that, there are we have a lot of plans for like different side quests and like, other boss fights and stuff that will happen here. But then these are the hub worlds, and attached to these hub worlds are the linear action stages. So this one over here is level 1. So you run through the gate, and you see your character like run off into the distance, and then it brings you to the loading screen for the first level. The idea there, it says story mission, meaning is like you're going to play through the story as the 3 different characters and experience it from their perspectives. So you'll be playing through the levels in different orders, and the levels will have different layouts to better suit each character's abilities. So as I said before, the character I'm playing as right now, he's good at jumping and like crossing large gaps, so he'll have more jumping in his stages. So these are like linear, kind of like obstacle courses. Jump through all the collectibles, pick them up, get all those enemies. There's some, like running on walls, running through loops, fun stuff like that. I'm not going to play through the whole level right now, but we do have... let me go back to the main menu. We do have a second level that I started working on that I had wanted to show real quick, because I'm in the middle of kind of blocking out that level. Yeah, just kind of in the middle of blocking out that level. I'd say maybe it's like, I don't know, a third of the way there. Probably could have just done this, use my little debug menu. Yeah, second level is going to be like a beach theme level, and we're going to try to come up with different gimmicks or different themes for each level. Like this one has a this one's a beach level, so up ahead there's like a little underwater cave. You go into the underwater cave, and there's like a rising and falling tide. Actually, not here. I don't think the water level rises and falls here. But this level is going to have more underwater segments in which you move slower and jump higher. And there's also I hit these balloons. There are also like secret collectibles you can find hidden throughout the environments. I think there's one down here, unless I already picked it up. I think I already picked it up, but I can check. Oh yeah. So the bottom left corner shows me how many secret collectibles I got in this level. I have 8 total, and there are 3 in this level, and I already got all 3 of them. But that's going to be used eventually for like upgrading stats and stuff. So that's pretty much an overview of the whole game. There's also going to be split screen multiplayer, which here kind of started throwing together a Smash Brothers style start screen with the 3 characters. Very basic, but I can't demonstrate it right now unless I get one of my other controllers. But yeah, I guess that's about it.
Awesome. Anyone have some quick questions?
I'm just curious. What's your ultimate plan for like the theming and styling of the game and its assets once it reaches later stages in development?
Yeah, that we're not entirely sure of. We have some mood boards we came up with, kind of like with all the material we've used for inspiration or looked at for inspiration for like ideas of what kind of art style we could go with. But because it's just me, a programmer, and then a composer and sound designer working on it, we don't have a dedicated artist working with us yet. So we pretty much just have an idea, but it would probably be along the lines of like, well, hard to say, but like, I would point to maybe something like Jack and Daxter in regards to like level of detail.
Oh, so you're going for like a sort of a playable cartoon kind of vibe?
Yeah, I guess.
Cool. Any other quick questions?
I have one.
Sure. Cactus?
Yeah. So like back in the old days, back when Super Mario 64 came out, they spent, almost a full year just working on Mario's movement before they even made a level. And I'm wondering if that mirrors your design process or if you kind of did both at the same time, because you seem to interact with the environment as a lot of your movement options.
Yeah, I guess that's close to what I did as well. I spent a lot of time on this game, like making my own character controller rather than using and using my own well, I don't know about my own physics, but like kind of handling the physics myself using raycast and translating the characters around exactly how I want them to move around. Like I don't use Unity's physics for the jumping and stuff. So there was a lot of like manual collision stuff I had to do to make sure like you collide with stuff. If you collide with them at a certain angle, you don't clip through it. And like when you run up a wall and you keep that momentum and when you launch yourself, it feels good. So I did spend a lot of time doing that. I think I might have spent more closer to like, let me think, maybe like a couple months kind of refining this to a point where I thought it felt good before I started working on the first level. But even when I was working on the first level, I think I'm still adjusting the way this feels, like the nuances of it to this day. But I'd say it's mostly there.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. Cool. So again, do you have any social media channels for this or any like an itch page or?
I'll link the itch page. I've been thinking about making a social media page, something on Twitter for it recently. So I might do that soon, but nothing on like Twitter or Facebook, but I'll link the itch page.
Cool. Looks great.
Thanks.
So next we have Liam Traynor presenting Reoccurring Nightmare.
Yes. Hi.
Hello.
My name's Liam. I am a solo game dev at the moment. And I just like to present the first game I ever made and published on my own, which I call Reoccurring Nightmare. It is essentially. You can all see my screen, yes?
Oh, we see Discord.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you see the main menu of the game?
Nope.
No.
No. Okay.
You probably shared the wrong app.
Let me see.
Echo that up.
All right, let me try now.
That looks good.
Okay, good. And you can hear the music?
Yeah.
Not on my end.
If you screen it doesn't share music, you have to share the image. But then sometimes with builds, you'll have issues.
It's also impossible on something running OS X to stream any sound at all over Discord.
All right, well, sound's not all that important. Basically, this is a game I made while experimenting with procedural level generation in Unreal Engine 4 and also atmospheric lighting. And it's basically a short horror experience about a person's reoccurring nightmare they have where they're trapped in this sort of surrealist hellscape of a city where nothing looks very natural, nothing looks real, and they're being chased by these giant eyeball creatures that chase them when they see you. There's a couple of them over there. And so the ultimate goal of the game is to reach the other end of the level to find the light so that you can wake up from the nightmare. And yeah, I just wanted to show that off.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions?
Have you ever heard of a developer named Color Fiction?
I have not, no.
He is in a very similar aesthetic and like mechanical vein as you.
Yeah, because I actually based a lot of the ideas off of Kitty Horror Show, if you've heard of her.
Name is vaguely familiar.
She tends to do a lot of like minimalist style short horror experience games.
Yeah, that's the genre. Color Fiction's just another dev in that genre, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Looks awesome. Do you have any social media or itch.io or anything else you'd like to post? Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have the itch.io page. It should already be up, right? Or...
You can post it over in the Mixer General or Mixer Game Links, either one. Cool.
I'm not streaming right now, am I?
You are. And we see lots of shadows within shadows or mirrors within mirrors. Click on...
There we go.
There you go. You got it.
Thank you.
Cool. Looks good.
I'll post that in the chat.
There you go. So next we have Jonathan Ampiaw from Small Leaf Studios. He's presenting Mythren. You there, John?
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, John.
Let me get my screen share up. Okay. So hi everybody, I'm Jonathan Ampiaw, working on Mythren, like Stefan said, with Aiden, who's also here. I'm currently located in Ohio, but the game started in Connecticut while I was attending UConn for my master's. So I'm going to start off with the Kickstarter trailer, give a few more blips of information, and then leave it off at there. Hopefully the sound works.
Yep.
Yeah, then we just hang on that screen for a while. So that's our Kickstarter trailer. To give a little bit more information about the game, Mythren is a social sim action RPG featuring monsters who you bond, explore, train, and fight with to overcome many trials. So it's meant to be a modern take on the monster taming genre, influenced games or by games like Pokemon and the Persona series and Monster Rancher, if any of you have ever played that. And it's basically fueled by a bunch of nostalgia from Pokemon and people who grew up with it, but kind of trying to bring it to a different level for the people who grew up with it, since currently Pokemon's marketed more towards kids. So the battle system is real-time combat where the player takes control of their actions. It's kind of in the arena fighter genre, if you've ever played any of those types of games. In the game, you participate in tournaments that are based off of this large calendar that you have access to, and you can customize your team by having your Mythren have different skills. If you saw in the trailer, you can train their stats in different ways, so you can build your own kind of Mythren. And you can have a team of up to 3 Mythren, which can change the kind of combos and strategies that you come up with during your fights. Bonding is super important in Mythren. It's how you unlock your Mythren's potential through learning new moves and getting them to evolve. Like I said earlier, you can train your stats for battles, so you can customize your playstyle. And then also, it's not just about your growth between your character and your Mythren, but your growth for your main character. So they have their own social skills that they have to improve so they can better connect with Mythren and the people in the world around them. Exploration is a huge element of Mythren. There's going to be a large city that most of the game takes place in, besides there's a home island where you raise your Mythren, a large city where you interact with different cultures, because it's kind of this cultural identity journey that the player character is going through. And then there's a couple different zones that you enter where you get to fight extra enemies, fight other trainers, and meet new Mythren. And I mentioned earlier that there's a calendar system. So the game goes through multiple different days across a month, and each month is kind of like an arc of the story. And you, as the player, decide how you want to spend your time for the month. So maybe you spend one day training your Mythren stats, you spend another day going to the Wild Isles and collecting resources. You might spend another day just interacting with people around the city. It's up to you how you want to spend your time. And we are live on Kickstarter currently. We are almost 50% on the way there with 14 days left. So we're at the halfway point and about halfway. So if you would like to support, you can either go to ks.mythren.com or I'll drop a link in Mixer General later.
Awesome. So any quick questions for John?
I mean, there's always something to eat.
Anyone? Nope. Cool. Awesome, John. It's really cool.
I don't want to have this discussion.
Yeah, and I don't know what that was. Anyways, yeah, it's come really far. It looks great. Hope you make it on Kickstarter. Yeah, feel free to post the links and people can ask you as needed. So real quick. I'm going to show mine. We don't have much time, so I'll go fast. So, hey, everyone. I'm Stefan. I'm with Hintersight Studios. I'm also with GameDevCT, but my personal company is Hintersight Studios. Let me pull this up real fast. So what I'm doing at Hintersight, we're doing new media games. Specifically, we're working on digital physical hybrid games. And one thing that I just figured out, it took a lot of trial and error because I don't think anyone else has done it yet so far, and with some help from my friend Adam. So this is Tabletop Simulator. It simulates physical, board games and stuff. And I got it to communicate with Unity. So I'm essentially creating a digital hybrid board game of an auto battler. So this would be on your phone, and this would be the physical representation of it, of like the board. And I'm working with some other companies to do NFC scanning technology. So these cards would have NFC tags within them. And what I just successfully did recently is basically transmitting data between the two. So if we look at this, you can see the enemy, they have these two assassin units. So they're going to jump. So I'm going to move my units up front, maybe put them together. So what I can do is I can scanning complete. And then when I start the game, you'll see the units that I created are now up front. So basically I can communicate between the two and, simulate the digital and physical. Let me do one quick play again. The background of all this AUTO-COMABT, like the auto battler type stuff, it's actually turn-based, but looks real time. So I can do a lot of debugging and do different synergies. If anyone's played an auto battler, you would know all that background stuff. So I'm going to try putting these guys farther away this time. Yeah, so you see they're farther away. So basically, I also, when I was coding the Tabletop Simulator to Unity stuff, I made it really flexible because I'm looking to expand it into other games in the future. Basically, just wanted to use it for a whole host of different things. Right now, especially with the pandemic, it's really hard to do board games. So a lot of people have been using Tabletop Simulator. And I think having this ability to simulate a digital hybrid type game like Drop Mix or Beast of Balance, or there's tons of others like Dark Tower and stuff like that, is really cool. I'm also working right now on having an actual PD, like a tablet display that will show the Unity application inside Tabletop Simulator, so you don't have to tab back and forth. I got a proof of concept working, but I have a few more little things I need to figure out. So that's it. Any questions? No. One second, let me stop sharing.
What goes into working with the NFT stuff, or getting like a company to build those into cards?
It's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of companies out there, like big manufacturing companies that you can find on Alibaba. That
NFC or NFT?
NFC.
Oh,
sorry.
Near field communication. I also have an NFC scanner myself that works, but it's only a single channel, so it'll scan a single item. But I'm working with companies that are doing multiple tablets that can scan up to 36 cards at once. So to get the actual manufacturing, it's pretty easy. Alibaba has companies that will insert them into playing cards because a lot of casinos have been using those for poker cards. So it's pretty easy to swap out from a poker card to whatever art I want to put on it. Most of this stuff, about 95%, I've been doing myself. I have a programmer or two that helps out, and that's about it. I'll post also some basic social media stuff. I don't have a lot fleshed out, but yeah. So anyways, that concludes the first part of this mixer, the basic presentation and show and tell. Now we're going to be going on to the game of the month, which was Slay the Spire. Hopefully people here have played it or at least know of it or whatever. It's pretty well known. Thankfully, we have Anthony with us. Are you there, Anthony?
Yep, I am here.
Awesome.
It says I can't do my camera, but I am here. Because it's not available for more than 25 users.
Oh, I thought one person could. That's okay. Not a big deal.
Okay.
So we have some questions for you. Let me see. Do you have any like a web page you want to share instead? You can share your screen if you want to just pull up Mega Crate Games or something so people have something to look at.
Sure. 1 second.
Okay. So we fielded some questions. I put together a list of a few questions for Anthony that we're going to go through. Then we'll open up to the floor and anyone who's interested can ask. Anthony has graciously provided his time. He also said he can spend a few minutes extra, although we'll have to wrap up around like 9:05 or so, just so that we can keep it moving for the stream, because a lot of people... There you go. That's great. Give us something to look at. That gorgeous art. Okay, so first question. So we just wanted to know, what was your path into game dev and what were some of your inspirations? And how did you make the leap from going as like a hobbyist or an indie dev doing small projects into doing this as your full-time job?
Sure. So I've always been interested in games. And then in college, I was doing computer science. And I met up with my co-founder, Casey, at the time. And we were both just interested. So we worked on some like Flash games and things like that, just hobbyist level stuff. We didn't like make much of any money, obviously. And then we graduated, got our degrees, went off and did boring computer science jobs that make a lot of money. Did that for a few years and then saved up enough money to where when we reconnected later on, we were like, hey, we should take like an actual legit attempt at doing this game developer thing. And we were fortunate to be in a position where, since we had saved up money and we both had wives who were also in the software industry, so we could quit our jobs and start working on Slay the Spire.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What made you think like this is something I want to do full time? Was just your passion, or?
Yeah, games have like always been a passion. I worked at a board game, card game store in the past. I've always been really interested in game design. Been like a lifelong Magic player and just card games in general. So things like Netrunner and stuff. So always wanted to do game design as like the dream job. So we found ourselves in an opportunity to try it out for a while and see how it goes. And we didn't think we would we had like a huge hit on our hands or anything. It was more like, hey, it'd be really cool if we could make enough money on this to where it's not like a huge negative that we quit our software jobs. Maybe it'll just be like a slight negative or something like that. That was like our thought kind of going into it. Like we want to work on this. I was working at a company that basically did bloatware on phones, so it wasn't exactly like fulfilling. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question, what was your work schedule like working on Slay the Spire? Like hours per day, general dev schedule, both from when you started and then later on as it went on, and what is it like now?
Sure. So how it worked was that we had a big Google Doc like full of tasks that we needed to get done. And then we would give like time estimates on the various tasks. So like, okay, this task here, we think it'll take like 5 hours, or 4 or 5 hours, whatever. This little bug fix, we think it'll take a half an hour, whatever. We would just like lay all these things out, and then we would just go through based on priority, and we would take these tasks and do them. And in terms of how many hours we did a day, generally we were doing like 80+ hour work weeks pretty consistently. Just throughout like the whole development cycle. It was just a lot of days of like you literally wake up and you work and then you take food breaks and stuff, and then at some point you go to sleep. But pretty exhaustive. Nowadays, now that we're finally done with everything, taking a lot easier, working significantly less. Yeah. But what was interesting is we were working really intensely up until launching into early access. And then we launched into early access. And then because we had this weekly update schedule for early access, like the workload didn't really drop at all. And in fact, like new things would come in, like answering support emails and things like that. And that's just something like, we still do today. So it's like, there was still plenty of work just all throughout early access. The workload didn't really lower until after early access, and we were like 1.0'd.
But if you're doing what you love, then you never work a day and whatever.
Right. Yeah. I don't, it's not it's not something I'm going to recommend to people because, you have to like be able to do it. And most, I don't think it's like super healthy, like looking back, it's like I gained a lot of weight, it wasn't very healthy for me in general, but like, I was just able to maintain that level of focus for a long time. And I think, if I was like the next project I work on, I'm probably going to take a step back and work a lot less. But
what kept you motivated, would you say?
A big part of it was just like that you're working for yourself. At least for me, it was like a sense of fulfillment, right? So it was fun. It was all internally motivated. It was just like it was its own reward, and that just it's not something that I can be like, oh, if you do this cool trick, this is going to work for you too. It's just either your brain works that way or like it doesn't. And for me, luckily, like it was able to work on it, and it was what made me happy. Like Casey today still is like, if he's not working, he's unhappy. And so he's, it's just how we are. So
makes sense. Cool. So next question. So when you were developing Slay the Spire, or at least early prototypes, how did you like quantify the different systems you have that you're working on? I know afterwards you did a lot of iterating and metrics and data collection. You also had different like forums through Discord, Slack, and all this stuff for getting data. But how did you like figure out from the very start, like how the resources worked, how many cards each character had, the cards budget, and all that stuff from like the early levels?
Sure. So a lot of it initially is by feel. So it's like I've been playing different card games pretty competitively for a long time. And so it had to just like feel right to me. And then I had a bunch of like probably some of the best Netrunner players in the world as my friends. And so I would show like really early builds to them and see how they thought that the game felt. And so before we started taking any kind of metrics, it was just, we had really experienced card game players trying it. And then the other thing that we would do is we would like, even really, really early on, I mean, we're talking like, a stick figure and you got like 10 cards implemented and like 5 enemies. Just like super core MVP stuff. We would take it to kind of like local events, kind of like this, in the Seattle indie scene. And we would just show it to people and see what they thought. And we would just sit back, be behind their shoulders with like notepads, writing down every little thing as we watched them play. So, and so we started that really early in the process. Like within the first week or two, we were going to local indie events and doing that.
Wow. Did the people you're showing it to understand like, oh, this is just very broken and an alpha and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like other indie devs.
Oh, it's all indie devs.
So we'd go and be like, at the very most, we'd be like, hey, this is kind of like Dominion or something. But basically, otherwise you shut up, you don't say anything, and you see what happens. And then when you see, oh, players don't know to hit end turn, we're like, oh, that's something we're gonna need to like put a lot of UI time into to like make sure that players know to hit end turn when they spent their energy and like things like that. And so like early on, we're like watching these things and keeping that in mind for later. Oh, and then another thing is, so for example, you asked about like how many cards in your hand, things like that. Luckily, there are just some like numbers that kind of make a lot of sense as a card game player. So it's like 5 cards in your hand. If you've played like a that's not like, it's not like I kind of came up with that number on my own. It's like I've played a lot of deck building games, and 5 cards is just like kind of a good starting point that you take in from prior knowledge. And we just started with 5 cards. We started with 3 energy, and those numbers just happened to be good solid numbers that through our testing worked out, and we kind of like balance around that. So like 3 energy is good because you want people to generally not play every card in their hand, but to be able to play, a good amount of the cards in their hand. And then 3 is just like a good solid number that human brains really like.
Yep. So speaking of UI, what was developing the UI for the game like? And like how many iterations did it take? What'd you learn from your different process? A lot of people have been, I wouldn't say copying, but mimicking the UI for their games.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of people using our UI, and that's fine. It works well. Well, so we started out looking at Hearthstone, and we were like, okay, we want to take elements of Hearthstone because that seems like a good like base point. And then the UI was just something that we would like really strongly look at in our in-person testing constantly. Like I said, from very early on. So like, are people understanding why they can't play cards? Are they understanding when they need to be ending their turn? Are they understanding when the enemies are attacking? We went through like countless iterations of the UI, and we would do little things like just changing little VFX on things, or like adding little hover effects in places, because we would write down a note that says like, player didn't realize that this was the case. Maybe we need to like have a little flash to draw their attention to this area. And so you build up this large base of testing and like writing down your observations. And that should be like, it should always be giving you something to do. If you do a test and you finish that test and you're like, I didn't write anything down, I don't have any actionable items, it wasn't a good test. Like, you weren't really paying attention. So that's like that should always be a thing. You should always have like goals in mind and be just constantly looking for like the slightest little detail, any hesitations, any questions they ask.
Do you approach it with like a scientific method, like you have a hypothesis that you're testing, or do you just throw it out there and see what you can learn?
We did both. So a lot of times we would have a specific question that we wanted to be answered. But you also want to just always be trying to take in as much as you can. Sometimes if you'd go to like an event or something, because we also did plenty of those, that is more general. You're just trying to take in people from different backgrounds, different like, experience levels, because we'd get a lot of people at those who like aren't really big card game players, and that you're just trying to take in as much as you can, like just taking in barrels of information. But then sometimes we would literally go in and we'd be like, okay, we have this question. We want this question answered. It's the single most important thing. We also keep our eyes on other things, but the intent system in particular was one that went through lots of iteration. That's the system that shows you like what the enemies are going to do on their turn. We didn't have that initially. Players, I've said this before in other talks, but players thought that like what the enemies were going to do were too random, and we actually came up with multiple different solutions for that, and it kind of like weaned it down into what it is over time.
And all those other solutions you can just turn into items.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know, like the one that hides intent.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your process behind the narrative and world building? Like, why the Spire?
Sure. So I'd say Slay the Spire is a very mechanically focused game. It's like mechanics first for sure, and then later on we would come up with ideas and like brainstorming sessions. Like, we would meet up and be like, okay, let's try to think of some motivations, why the player's doing whatever. We actually had multiple brainstorming sessions just to come up with a name, which was miserable, and I hated that process. But ultimately, the reason why we have a Spire is because we're like, okay, we have like a dungeon crawling, card fighting deck builder, okay? How do we make it different? Well, generally a trope of dungeon delving games is that you're delving underground into a dungeon. Okay, screw that. You're not going underground. And then we were like, okay, so clearly you're going up or you're going sideways. Maybe you'll be in a train or something. Which Monster Train eventually came out. It was kind of funny. And so we were like, okay, well, clearly you should like ascend this tower, right? And that'll be just different, whatever. And then like we would generate that kind of core assumption and build around that. And then the spires stuck. Originally, when we were generating all these different ideas, we had like this class stratification as you like ascended the spire, like you'd go up and that would be where like the wealthier nobles were and stuff. And like we had all these different ideas that changed and morphed over time. And it was more about just constantly having these brainstorming sessions and then like culling things, like, just pulling down into the true essence of whatever we wanted. And that's kind of how we worked on the story. But the story morphed and changed like over time. Like Nyao, the big whale that resurrects you at the beginning, that actually came fairly late in the process because, and again, she came into the game because of a mechanical consideration. It was like we had the game, I think the player could get into Act 3 at the time even. I think the first 2 acts were pretty much done. And we didn't like that your starting situation was so samey run to run. And we were like, oh, what do we want to add to kind of fix that? And we were like, oh, what if we have kind of like this randomizer at the beginning that gives you some choices and you choose between them. And that gives you a starting bonus and that can kind of help initially define your starting run. And we were like, okay, well, what does that look like? What if we have a weird NPC that gives you these bonuses? And then we like came up with this whole thing for Nyao, the big whale. But that came in pretty late. Like we had already been working on the game for like a year at least at that point. So
yeah, I always say when in doubt, alliteration works. So I like Slay the Spire. So this is kind of like a general question. After this, we'll go into ones people have posted and then just fields anyone. So overall, what are your thoughts as a successful indie dev? And what would you have done the same? What would you do different? And any general advice or tips to all these other indie devs out there?
Sure. So what are my general thoughts on being a successful indie dev? I mean, it's great. It's nice. It was unexpected. You should definitely not expect that things are going to be a success. In terms of what I would do differently, it's interesting because, so much of like what makes you a success is kind of like contingent on just like the environment and luck and other things that if I could go back and change things, maybe it would have ended up differently, right? So probably not, even though now I look at Slay the Spire and I see all these design flaws with it still and things I would want to change going forward.
Like what? Can you give one example?
Yeah, Wraith form is a good example. So like I probably wouldn't have included an endless mode in the game. That's like a common one I go on because I think it is actually a negative experience that people do, and then oftentimes people like do it once, so they get burnt out on it and they never do it again. It's probably good if that would not be included. We have other things in mind, but
cool.
I don't want to sell them, but but I think that's actually I'm gonna rotate how I answer this question. In terms of advice, I think it's actually really good to be hypercritical of things and especially of your own work. So like at no point did I ever look at Slay the Spire and I'm like, yes, this is perfection. This is like the best game ever. It's like all I ever do is I look at Spire and I'm like, there's so many things that need to be done and need to be fixed. And like, it was just always like that. Like the task list of things that needed to be changed and altered, like it only ever grew over time. And at some point it's just like, all right, like, yeah, it's not perfect. I'm still not happy with it, but fuck it. We just need to launch it. Like, we just need to get it out here. And, but you still should always be aware of what you can change and that there's just always things that you should be looking at to improve.
Yeah. At what point do you say, like, okay, this is good enough? Do you just go by feel, or?
I mean, it has to be. Well, okay. So one, it has to feel that way from your point of view. But two, you should be looking to your playtests and see, okay, are my players actually having fun? Do my playtesters actually do they just play when I ask them to play, or are they like playing on their own? Are they like actually playing it again, right? Or at least for a game like Spire, if you have a fixed narrative game that has like a start and an end, sure, that's not going to be as useful. But like if you have something like a roguelike, it's pretty important that they actually play the game more than once and then grow tired of it. And so it was really encouraging to us that our play testers would keep playing the game like for hundreds of hours. That was a really, really good sign. So we were getting good data. Our data was showing us, hey, people really like this. We were hearing good things from people. And then to us, it was reaching a point where we felt, okay, this is like probably better than a lot of games that we've played. At least it feels that way. And then we're not done. We're going to release an early access and then just keep working on it and improving it even more. So at that point, we were like, okay, let's do it.
What made you choose early access over, Kickstarter or going to a publisher?
I actually really dislike Kickstarter as a model. I mean, no.
What do you have coming out in a month?
Yeah, I know, but for board games it's a bit different.
Yeah,
the unfortunate realities of it. But for video games in particular, it's fine if you need it. But early access we thought made a good fit for the roguelike framework. So it's like we want a game that's basically offering you kind of infinite experience generation, where every time you play it's going to be different, right? And a early access lets us constantly be tweaking things, adding new content, working on that metric-based balance to just improve our balance over time more and more and more. And I think at the time we looked at Dead Cells at their early access, and we really liked what they were doing. And we were like, hey, this is like a good model. It seems like the community is reacting to it well. And so that's what we did. And like we didn't actually have what most indies would consider a successful launch. Like our first 2 weeks of sales were pretty whatever. It was over time as we did the weekly releases and early access, and we started to like really build up among the streamers and YouTubers in particular. And we started to get like a big showing there. We got more and more and more attention, and then things kind of started to snowball. It's because the game industry is pretty snowbally. Like once you reach a certain size, once your snowball gets big enough, then like people start to write articles about you as like free press, right? And then you start to snowball more and more, and then like bigger streamers pick you up, and that snowball just gets bigger.
Yeah. It's hard to get that critical mass, though.
Exactly. So, it's kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. And that's actually a piece of advice that I have to like any indie, like just period, is you need to be thinking about YouTube and Twitch. They're the single most powerful marketing tools available right now. And like you should probably think about it at the game design level. Like one of the things that Casey and I would do in our testing is one of us would play and we would stream to the other person. And so like, you would have the experience of like, I would be watching him play the game, or he would be watching me play the game. And we would be like, hey, it's a little unclear to the viewer what's happening here. We should improve this. And that would be like another thing we would do. So we try to make things really clear to people watching. And I think that helps a lot. So Spire is a great streaming game, right? And that was a big part of our success. So
why didn't you go to publishers though? What was
we did? They turned us down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We went to a couple different publishers. They all showed wise judgment and turned us down. and then we eventually went to Humble for mobile and console porting, but that was after we had been out. So now looking back in hindsight, I'm incredibly happy that the publishers turned us down, right? Like incredibly happy. But at the time we thought, oh, we absolutely need a publisher. And it was pretty disheartening when they turned us down. So,
yeah, it makes, so here's a question someone asked related to that is, did you have like ups and downs, like that roller coaster that a lot of indie devs have, the emotional roller coaster? And did having like a friend and a partner help with that? Or like, how did you get over those crushing defeats?
By being weird. I mean, honestly, we just kept chucking away at it every single day. Like, and it was a little disheartening. The publisher thing was like the only real thing that was like, man, that sucks. But then, what really sucked about it was we wasted like 2 weeks of time, like really like, you know, getting things ready to show to publishers and like doing a lot of work just to like show a trailer and all these other things to publishers and like creating a pitch and all that. And so what really sucked about it was just that we had like wasted 2 weeks of work on the game instead on like publisher stuff. but you know, we were like, oh, that's unfortunate. And then like a couple days later, we were just right back to it. But and then the only other emotional roller coaster part was when we did our initial launch, and then it didn't look like things were going to be that successful. But at the same time, we were like, hey, you know, we're just going to do this early access thing. We're going to do weekly releases. Whatever happens, happens. We had created projections for sales and stuff, and we tried to be really realistic with it. So we had made conservative projections, like, hey, what if this is a total failure? You know, what's the biggest success we could ever imagine? Which, you know, we like blew past that. And so at the time it was like, hey, you know, it could just not work. If that happens, that's okay. We tried it. You know, we would still be okay. So
plan for failure, hope for success.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here's a question I have. Then I'll go on to some other questions people have been posting in the Slay the Spire discussion. If you want to post there, I'll try to hit those first, and then we'll just do an open roundtable. So here's a question. So you approach converting a digital game based on a physical game. So it's cards in a digital environment. And now you're going back to the physical game with the Slay the Spire board game coming in Kickstarter. So what kind of motivated you to do that? And then how did you approach that type of design process?
Sure. So it's actually a lot easier going from physical to digital than the other way around. I mean, digital is just so much more powerful, right? Like an advantage for anyone who's ever played a deck builder like Dominion, you know, it's a pain to like shuffle your deck so often. Like it's one of the big downsides. And then in a digital game, you know, the computer shuffles for you. It just feels crisp and great. You know, the computer handles all the math for you, and the user doesn't need to like deal with that. You know, we can have those flashing effects and things that I talked about. It's going from physical deck builders to digital, you get all this space that you don't have in the physical realm, and it's very like freeing, right? So it was more like going from physical to digital. It was just like we had this wealth of things that we could do. You know, we're not constrained. Now doing this the other way, it's like, okay, how do we make this mechanic that like works so flawlessly in the game work in a physical space? And so it's actually, you know, really, really challenging in comparison. And I don't have like a secret silver bullet or anything. It's just like hard work as far as I can tell. You know, and clever solutions, you know, that you come up for like specific problems. But definitely it's easier going to digital. And the other thing is because of like the business practicalities of it, you know, digital things just scale better, right? Like we can make a product, we can all put it on Steam, and then that can explode and do really well. But like if we're talking about like a board game, well, I need to be thinking about how many physical copies am I going to print. Like we have to talk about, you know, selling in a brick and mortar store or not, and then you have to deal with all these different margins and things like that. And like, oh, how much physical cardboard can I include in the box? Each piece of cardboard has a cost to it, right? So there's just all these realities of being in the physical world that changes how things scale and makes it different and constrains you. And you know, being now thinking through those concerns now that we've been making the board game, it's really interesting. But yeah, it just shows the power of the digital world, right? That like you can just have two people working together on something, or you know, just a single indie dev, and they can make something and like millions of people can play it, right?
Well, you can do that with board games. Like, I mean, you look at Gloomhaven or something, it's just a few people working on that.
True.
But yeah, the profit margins are much lower and it's much more of a headache. They always say a good way to make a small fortune in the board game industry is start with a large fortune. So.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, like, for example, with board game stuff, like you have to work with like a publisher pretty much, right? Like you have to have like you
or
have to deal with supply chains and stuff, or Kickstarter. And that's why, hey, Slay the Spire is going to Kickstarter, because the reality is like that's just the way to do it in the modern day, right? So
yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's look for some other questions. Someone want to know, do you know why the publishers turned you down exactly? Was there any specific reason?
No, not really.
Did they give any feedback at all?
No, it was mostly a waste of time, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like really, it was like you would get like the we're like too busy right now, you know. But like that's, you know, just a polite way of saying no, kind of thing. So,
yeah, it makes sense.
Now maybe I'm actually really bad at writing pitches. That is totally possible. You know, these are like orthogonal skills to being a game developer. So, or maybe just our art style was like a big turnoff. Like, you know, but the thing is, I don't know, and so there's no, you know, I don't actually have any insight into the publisher black box. It's just, you know, you put your pitch and your game into it, and then we got rejected, and that's all there was to it. So it's like, okay.
Having spoken to publishers, I don't think they know either.
Yeah, you know, I think in part, you know, they like safe bets, right? And Slay the Spire was not necessarily a safe bet at the time. So,
here's a good one. So, how do you feel about the Slay the Spire mods and other people that have been continuing to add things after the success? And did you go in like planning to do mods and have a workshop and all that stuff, or how did you reach that conclusion?
Yeah, so I am really pro modding. I think mods are a great service to users, basically. And so when we made Slay the Spire, I was thinking, oh man, this game actually could be really easy to mod. I mean, people can just make their own cards, do stuff. We'll probably support this at some point. And then the modders figured it out on their own without us helping them. And then, like, while we were still in early access, and we were like, oh, this is cool, this is great. And then we made a section in our Discord for the modders, and we chatted with them, and even now, like, we're pretty active in there. Casey's active in there a lot. And in general, I'm like really pro modding. We've done the streams where we go through and we just like play mods of our game, and it's really fun. It's interesting to see what people can do with what you've created, because, you know, games are, at least like a game like Slay the Spire, it's very much a system, right? And so people can create new characters with a bunch of cards and relics, and you know, it's an entire framework that they can make content in, and we can go try it. And yeah, you know, maybe it's not like the most balanced thing in the world, but hey, it's fun. It's cool to take a look at it.
Awesome. Okay, so I don't see any other questions in the general discussion. Does anyone else want to chime in and have any questions?
Did the publishers give you any feedback on what you could improve?
No, like literally, I'm telling you, they were like, they just basically rejected. Like it would, like, you know, I mean, we're talking like less than a paragraph. I mean, it like I said, it was basically from our perspective like a waste of time. And we even got rejected by like the indie mega booth at PAX and stuff too, which was interesting. But so I think there were some. It just didn't look interesting, and probably, you know, they get a bunch of emails from indie devs, and they check like your GIF, and then they're like, looks like shit, and, you know, next email, you know.
It's also a lot of who you know.
Yes, and that's true. And we didn't have any kind of connections or anything like that. You know, now we know a lot of people, but, you know, at the time it was just, we were just some no-name, you know, nobodies with a game that like looks weird and was in a genre that like wasn't on Steam at the time. So they couldn't just say, hey, let's look at like, you know, past sellers of this genre and see how well they've done. So I think, you know, they probably made like a 5-minute decision and then bam, that's it. And that's just how it happens. So, you know, but maybe it was the publishers we reached out to too. It's not like we went through every single publisher. We went through just a couple. We reached out to just a couple that we were interested in.
Cool.
Out of curiosity, what publishers did you approach?
I'm not gonna name them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to name names. Any other questions people have?
I got one.
Okay, you can go first.
So there was a moment early on in Slay the Spire's development, I think it was still in beta, where it got picked up by a high-profile Chinese streamer, and that elevated the popularity of it really immensely. And I was wondering if you could talk a bit about some of the efforts you made for localizing your game once foreign audiences started to play it, because I know that was pretty instrumental in it getting globally popular.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's very true. There was a point early on, and it was a Chinese streamer on not Twitch, but on the Chinese equivalent of Twitch, and his video had just like a ton, like an insane amount of views. And so Casey and I, we looked at each other when we found this out, and we saw that our game was only in English at the time, and we look at our Steam page, and it shows, hey, all of a sudden we're selling more copies of our game in China than anywhere else, and we're like, oh shit, we should probably jump to localize this ASAP. Like, we should have launched with Chinese support, actually. And so we scrambled. We worked with a localization company, and then also we worked with our community to do like community localization stuff. But we immediately scrambled on doing localization then in all kinds of different languages. I mean, we have a ton of languages that we support now because the cost is really low and the payoff is really great. And then once we finally did support Chinese, like I think even today, probably China is still our largest market.
Oh, wow.
But I think sometimes it swaps between US and China. But
you just released past the firewall, right? Like, you just had an official Chinese release, or before they were going around the security stuff, right?
No, it's still technically just in Steam right now. Okay. Although we are still working on that. But yeah, so China should definitely not be underestimated. It's a huge market. Like, now, you know, it's a card game, and card games do well in Asian markets just in general. So, like, you know, Japan, Korea, that all does well for us as well. So, but yeah, localization is a huge plus, and it's actually surprisingly cheap. Like, I really recommend it for indies. So,
so was it Odin? You had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. You said you felt like you got rejected by publishers because the game looks weird or whatever. We've had a lot of problems with just posts and stuff like that, getting them to reach a good saturation point. But when we can get our games into people's hands, they tend to really enjoy them. So I'm curious how you got past that like wall of getting playtesters and getting people to actually play it.
Yeah, I mean, that was the the thing that was solved by streamers, basically, and word of mouth. And so for initially for playtesters, it's like we reached out to our friends and stuff. Like I said, I had a bunch of connections in the Netrunner community. I actually ran the biggest Netrunner fan site. Netrunner's a card game like Magic: The Gathering.
Okay.
And so I had a bunch of connections. So for getting playtesters, that was easy. We just knew a lot of people. But once we were in early access, that was hard because like our marketing, it's not like we solved marketing or something, you know, like our game is not very, like we don't have a super sexy animated image where it's like, oh man, all these crazy things are happening. Look at these physics things or whatever, you know, it's like, all right, you're playing some cards, like, okay, whatever, you know? So, but, part of what I was thinking when we were making Slay the Spire was that there's a ton of Hearthstone streamers and other streamers, and they would probably be interested in a game like Slay the Spire, especially because my thinking at the time was, so if you play a game like Magic or Hearthstone, right? It's like your lifestyle game. You play that game. You're a Hearthstone player. Like that's what you stream. You know, you're pretty loath to like jump to another card game because if you're either gonna play Hearthstone or you're gonna play that other card game, right? You're gonna be like the streamer for that game. But a game like Slay the Spire, a Hearthstone streamer could just go jam some hours in between, like, you know, they're climbing up the ladder or whatever. And we're not saying, hey, you should play Slay the Spire and not your big card game of choice. You can, you know, in fact, we're like really appealing to those players. And so we had like pretty much all the big Hearthstone streamers ended up playing Slay the Spire at some point. And then we would get advantage from things like, because you play Slay the Spire so much and so often, you know, I'm sure if you're on Steam, you'll recognize this, but whenever your friends play something, you know, you get that little pop-up. And, you know, if your game is something that people play over and over and over again, your friends are going to find out about it. So we mostly spread through word of mouth, Steam's little stuff like that, and then streamers. Streamers were the big thing. So I guess the one thing we did do is we blitzed out stream keys to streamers. We just like gave that shit out like candy early on, like before we even launched. You know, we were like, please play our game. You know, I sent some personalized emails. We used Keymailer. I reached out to like Magic streamers and Hearthstone streamers. Keymailer is a very useful tool. I recommend it. You can put into Keymailer games that streamers have played, and then you'll get back. So I could put in streamers that have played Hearthstone and what was the one I did? FTL or like Binding of Isaac, and I would get back, hey, this streamer has streamed both of these games, and then, you know, I could sort them by how many followers they had, and then I would just go bam, 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 you know, sending out keys to all these people, and that worked out pretty well. You know, we had a lot of initially, you know, smaller to mid-sized streamers stream it initially, but a lot of the Twitch community is like pretty connected too. So like, you know, if a mid-sized streamer streams it, maybe a slightly larger streamer finds out about it, and then they stream it and they see that their audience is engaged with it. And then our game does well from the factor of like, you can watch somebody like Northern Lion stream our game, and then you think, oh my god, he's playing terribly. Like I could do so much better than this, because like everything's very visible. It's like you go your own pace. It's a strategy game, and then they can go and buy it for themselves and play it. So
yeah, I remember hearing a talk about a lot of streamers would get people to buy it because the people watching them would be frustrated and be like, I can do this better.
Yeah,
they'll buy the game.
It was a very common thing. Like, so, you know, it's good to watch and be aware of like why things are working. And so like I would read lots of Reddit comments, you know, we get emails. I'd like look at YouTube comments to see, okay, like what are people resonating with? And that was just a very common train of thought that I'd see people say. So
okay.
Did you ever sponsor a stream?
I never sponsored a stream. Our marketing budget for the game was like $100.
Okay, that's good to know.
Now that's pretty weird, and you know, this might not apply to everyone. You know, so keep that in mind. But yeah, we were weird in that we spent like no money on marketing outside of like Keymailer.
Right.
But we never paid to have a streamer play our game.
So here's a question from Sloda. He wanted to know how did you think about tutorial development, and what point did you consider how to teach players? Like, did you start off from the very beginning to create a tutorial, or did you approach it later on, or what was that process?
Not the very beginning, but fairly early. And like, we don't like big, annoying tutorials. I hate hand-holdy stuff. So like, we tried to condense everything down into those first few pop-ups you get. And then we made a first-time user experience pop-ups. So like, the first time you like try to play a card with no energy, you get that little tiny pop-up that's like, oh, you can't play cards without energy or whatever. And so we tried to really streamline that, but that was a process that happened over time and over testing and trying to look at how we could streamline that down to be like as minimal as possible. And then the game, it's like drag cards and play them. So like the core verb of the game is pretty simple. It's just there's like a lot of other things going on. But you definitely do want to think about your tutorialization, especially because how it affects your testing is like it's kind of weird because when you're doing your testing, you don't want to like tell your playtester very much, right? Like ideally you just plop them in front of the game, you just shut the hell up and you just watch them go. But maybe with your very initial build, you'll probably need something, or you're just going to watch them scramble, and maybe that's fine too, because you can write a bunch of stuff down about that. But it's something that you'll want to think about earlier rather than later. If you've gone like a year into your process and you haven't thought about your tutorial, that's way wrong. So
cool. I had a question. What made you decide to do a roguelike as opposed to a game with like more progression systems?
One thing that I hate. Okay, well, two things that I hate. Just as a player, I don't like sitting down for a roguelike or a roguelite, I guess.
Yeah.
And then thinking after I've played the run and lost, oh, there's like a bunch of just passive systems that just make my numbers go up. I literally could not have won this game. That just makes me feel bad as a player. I wanted someone that, like, if you sit down and you're like a magic pro, you can win Slay the Spire on your first run. And that is a thing that has, like, you can do. And I really like that. I think that's an important part of the roguelike versus roguelite distinction too. Like, if you're a roguelike, you should be beatable on your first run. You probably won't because, it's going to be hard and it's going to beat you. But yeah. And then, and the second thing that I hate is I hate grind. I'm a very grind-averse player. And I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm making a game that I want to play, right? Like, I'm making a game that has systems that I like. I don't like to grind 100 hours to get, my numbers high enough to do whatever. It's just, that's not the kind of game I'm interested in. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why I've been turned off on a lot of recent quote-unquote roguelike that are actually roguelite, just because of the persistent systems. Did you ever do test with persistent systems, or was it right from the start, we're not going to have it?
Right from the start.
Meow, but that's about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, right from the start, we were like, no, we don't like those kind of systems. So, they're just often so uninteresting too. That's a side note. I don't know. One of my pet peeves is like, you look at a big like passive skill tree or something, and instead of like seeing interesting abilities, it's like, oh, my health increases by 5%. Oh, it's not interesting to me,
so there with you. So there. Any other questions people have? Speak up.
Did you ever form any relationships with specific streamers or YouTubers?
One thing that I do is I would watch a lot of streamers and like interact with them and talk with them. And part of it is because I just enjoyed it. And then also is kind of useful. If you watch a streamer play your game, it's kind of it's actually almost better than watching a playtester in real life. And So, especially during early access, that was useful. And why I say it's almost better than watching someone in real life is because the streamer is like vocalizing their thoughts, right? They're speaking to their audience. They're telling you, "Oh, this card's trash. I'm not gonna take it," or you can hear them like audibly exclaim the moments that they're psyched about and things like that. So I actually constantly watch streamers during early access, and I think that was useful. And like that would kind of go back into a feedback cycle. But I definitely did develop some relationships with some streamers that I in particular enjoyed watching.
Alrighty, thank you.
There's been a number of very similar games released lately. Have you been playing the ones that are maybe not derivative of Slay the Spire, but at least inspired by Slay the Spire?
So I get I have an email thing set up so that whenever somebody like writes an article and mentions Slay the Spire, I get an email about it. So whenever an article gets written and it's like, oh, it's like Slay the Spire, but X, I get an email about it, and then I'll go and I'll play the game. So I've played almost all of them, and yeah, some are definitely more on like the clone-ish, and some are more like, oh, cool, they've done like interesting novel things here. And I definitely have my like the ones that I enjoy more than others. But I think it's just cool that people are working in that space and taking some of the things that, like the intent system or the ascension system, that I think are really good and should be in more places.
A lot of people are copying your approach to UX as well. Like a lot of card games just have a lot cleaner UIs in the post Slay the Spire world.
Yeah, and that's just a good thing, right? Like, I'd say, so Casey and I have talked about this. The thing that bothers me the most isn't people that just like copy the UI. The thing that bothers me the most is people that just copy the values for things. So it's like, if your game has like 6 damage strikes and 5 block defends, it's like, okay, like, maybe you should have done a little bit more differentiation. So like those are the things that bother me the most, just because then it's cleaving a bit too close, I think. But that's a purely subjective evaluation. So
going back to the streaming thing just real briefly, how often would you say you interacted with the streamer versus just letting them play without input? Because our game, the game I'm working on, is also in early access right now, and I've watched like hundreds of streams at this point, but I tend to do it without interacting because I don't want to influence them at all. I want to know what they're thinking without a developer talking to them.
That's definitely better. It's more like I'm not going to tell them how to play or anything. It's like I'll be like, hey guys, and I'll interact with the chat a bit, and the streamer might be like, oh, hey Anthony, or hey Mega Crit, and like we'll talk a little bit, but I try to be pretty quiet. But just because also one thing that'll happen if you talk too much is people will bombard you with questions. I get there's been many a stream where people are like, oh, devs in chat, and then somebody's like, at Megacrit, when's Slay the Spire coming to mobile? That happened for a long time, and let me tell you, I got tired of answering that question. So it's definitely better to, on balance, probably be more quiet, especially if you're there to learn, right? If you're there to like chat with the community, chat with the streamer, that's one thing. But if you're like especially wanting to like just sponge up the information and the playtest feedback, just be quiet.
You should play the game Patrick's working on, Wildermyth. It's fun. It's also really highly rated on Steam too.
Thanks, Stefan.
Yeah, I
don't want to toot my own horn.
I know you don't.
I've actually played Wildermyth. It was fun.
Oh, you have?
No way! Oh, awesome.
Well, I played it with my friend. We were screen sharing, and we both had characters in it. We had a fun time. So
I'm glad.
There you go. Yeah,
Thanks
I just wanted to throw that plug in for you. Let's see. Cool. So I don't see any other questions. Anyone else have any last minute things? We'll probably start wrapping this up. Feel free to post them. I can also pass on stuff to Anthony later. Let's see. Someone said, how did you handle giving feedback to a wider player base?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Yeah, so how did you handle giving feedback to a wider player base, like patch notes, I guess, or how did you like communicate to a large audience?
Is it potentially getting feedback? Like,
so the question I'm asking is, our game released some weeks ago, and we're getting like a lot more people posting on our forums in our Discord, and like getting to actually respond to all of it at once is like, how in the world do we do this?
I see. You don't respond to all of it. I mean, you could, but I think it's a fool's errand. So what we did is we set up a bot in our Discord so that anyone, I mentioned this in my metrics talk at GDC, but we set up a bot in our Discord and it'll just collect any feedback people put. So like if someone's in a channel, they can say like feedback : and then just whatever, and then our bot will be like, thanks, you've collected the feedback, and it'll like go and it'll put it in a channel for us to look at later. And that bot, by the way, we didn't even make it. We had a friend of ours who made it. And if you want, just PM me and I can give you access to this bot because he's like put it out for other developers.
Oh, really?
To use. Yeah. So please PM. Yeah, feel free, but that's fine. PM me about it. I think he wants more devs coming his way because he wants to build it. So he's been trying to build upon it. But anyway, so what's great about that is, one, the player feels like the issue has been attended to, right? The bots told them it's cool. 2, do actually go and look at those messages. That is useful. And then 3, if the message is crap, you just ignore it. You delete it and you move on. Or you don't delete it. You leave it in the channel and just move on. But like, you're going to get a lot of bad feedback. And you're going to get a lot of bad, even worse solutions. But there is going to be useful feedback. And so it's important to look through.
Thanks. Yeah, there's usually a good chunk of feedback is just stuff we're completely unaware of, and then there's stuff that's like, oh, are you adding workshops? We're like, no, many times.
Yeah. The other thing for that is having a pinned thing can be useful. But yeah, basically, I would also try to like funnel as many people to your Discord as possible because then mods and community members can help you. We didn't use the Steam discussion threads that much. I mean, we put our patch notes there, but I mean, I didn't really talk to too many people on Steam. Just Discord is a useful tool, and Steam's forums are not. they're just much worse. So, plus, if people are in your Discord, you can like put announcements and things like that in, and just it gives you another way to like interact with your customers. It's really useful.
Okay.
What would be your sentiments on Reddit?
Reddit's good too. We have a Reddit. One of the things that we would do whenever we post announcements is like I post it on our Twitter, I post it to our Reddit, I post it to our Discord, I post on Steam if it's like patch notes or something. But yeah, Reddit's good. And I actively interact with people on Reddit, and you'll get a lot of people who are happy about that. It's like, oh, it's so great that the devs are interacting with you. And that is something that we can do that like bigger studios can't, right? It's an advantage we have that you can put a face to something and like actually be a person interacting with you instead of a faceless corporation. Make use of our advantages. Like, we have weaknesses, we have advantages. Try to make use of your advantages. I mean,
yeah. It's also worth mentioning that Reddit kind of passively collects users in ways that other social media doesn't, because a lot of Redditors sort of train themselves to like, oh, I'm getting into a hobby. Let me see if there's a subreddit. All you have to do is make the subreddit. With a Twitter, you have to keep putting things out to get anyone to read anything you make.
I've heard it has some of the highest engagement of any social media.
Yeah. Facebook was the worst for us, to the point where I even stopped posting stuff to Facebook. But I mean, I probably should have still posted to Facebook, but it was just such a waste of time. I actually really stopped.
Oh, that's very good to know.
But that maybe not the best idea. It's probably better to be on every single social media and be spamming and all the terrible things. But at least for us, Reddit and Discord were the best. Twitter after that, Facebook sucked. So
there are ways to link them all together to post pretty quickly now.
Yeah, exactly. So
here's one last question. Alex wanted to know, was there an explicit effort to control the scope of the project? How did you know, like, we're going to have these many classes? Like, for a long time, we thought it was just going to be 3, then you added a 4th. What made you decide, like, okay, this is where we're going to call it, or all that stuff? And, like, how did you lead up to that final, the final ending, to the game?
Sure. So it's a bit complicated. I mean, at some point we did get really burnt out, right? Like there was a point after the Watcher, after the Heart, where I was like, man, I don't want to work on Slay the Spire anymore. Like, you can only do 80-hour work weeks for so much. And you know, we did reach the point of burnout, and now, you know, I'm not burnt out anymore. We took some time to really chill and relax, but so that was definitely a factor. And part of it too was the game engine we made it in, libgdx. It doesn't actually like handle assets and things too well. So as if we had kept adding more and more characters, it honestly, it wouldn't have worked very well. I don't recommend libgdx, actually. It was not good. And then part of it is the pain of like ports and things like that. So if I make a new character right now, you know, we have to go through porting it to all the different platforms again too, and then, you know, it's already arduous to like make sure that all the consoles and mobile and everything are lined up with PC. Your players get really unhappy when it's like, hey, I'm playing on like the PlayStation and the PC is like 6 months ahead of me, but because we have like, you know, it has to like interface through our publisher and the porting company to actually arrive on the port, and it has to like interface through the console, like, you know, itself, like Sony or Nintendo or whoever. So like there was a lot of pain points in there. But so there's all of those realities, right? And then there's also just that at some point you probably should just feel satisfied enough with it to think, okay, this is good enough. And at least for us, we reached that point where we thought with the final ending and the 4th additional character, that was good enough. Like, we could probably keep making more, but at some point we know we're interested in working on new projects, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, you want that thing that like drives you to work on it, at least for me. So yeah, I don't know. There's not just like a quick, concise answer here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for your time. It's a little past 9. Some people that are doing streaming have to leave. I'd like to thank Anthony for joining us, answering questions, all that fun stuff. It was great. Love the talk. This talk will be recorded on Bugs, the Boston Unity Group's Twitch channel. Chris, are you there?
I am indeed, yes. Thank
Cool.
you very much, Stefan. It was fantastic.
Yeah, no problem.
Really interesting presentations this evening. Thank you very much for having us over. It's been kind of cool to visit. Yeah, we will have this on our Twitch channel, available for a couple of weeks on demand, and I will be uploading them to our YouTube channel as soon as I get a few cycles spare. I have a couple of bugs behind on our YouTube channel, but they do all end up on there eventually. So.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Yeah. See you guys later. Feel free to keep in touch. We'll be doing this again next month with another game of the month. More people showing off their stuff, and likewise. So have a good night and take it easy.